So we have this great slot. We're not in food coma after lunch. We need you sharp for this hard problem of solving inflection. My name is Nebojša Ćirić. I lead internationalization team at Google. And George.
My name is George Roten. I work at Apple. I've been working on ICU since 2000s, almost 24, actually over 24 years now.
Get that lifetime membership.
Good point. I work on Siri at Apple, and I work with topics involving grammatical agreement, generating a grammatically correct sentence.
Today we'll cover what inflection is, what the problem is here. Some examples, impact of having inflection support or not having it. What did we do so far? What we plan to do in the future. And then related to this image on the right, what about AI? Like, isn't AI going to solve this problem? And if you actually look at the picture, the prompt was student in the forest of Russian words. I have on good authority that there are no Russian words in this photo. Image, they are just junk with letters that look Cyrillic in most of the cases. Do pay attention, all of the images in these presentations are done by AI and they all have slight problems. The next item is, can we use this inflection support now, and how can you help? So inflection is process of changing form of words to express different grammatical features like tense, a number, gender, or case. It's a complex and nuanced process, and it's really difficult to capture in software. And that's why it's currently unsolved. There's an asterisk affecting cost in translation and retranslation of things, accuracy and native feel of text and audio sentences. And end users have subpar, confusing, or even offensive experience with the product. For example, gender-aware UIs might, if you don't have that, the device may treat you as a man while you're a woman, and that's not the greatest experience. Why is it unsolved with asterisks? There are partial implementations that cover some features or some languages. Our goal is to cover all the features in the end with most of the languages and have it in open source. There's some examples in, I'm using Serbian language here. On the right, you have the simple hi Peter message, just a greeting. On the left, it's a Serbian one where you actually have to change the name of the person you're addressing. It's an evocative case. This is the second one, is just a fragment that says, you have a ticket from London to Paris. In English, you only need those prepositions, from and to, and nothing else changes. In other languages, you might actually have to use prepositions and change the source and destination location. To give you a feeling of how this feels, where like the bad inflection in languages, I'll give you the bad English example. Where the number and prepositions are wrong. So there is 3 item of your inbox, kinda, versus the correct, there are 3 items in your inbox. That's how we feel when we end up in non-inflected products. Other words, the nouns inflect also. This is like a German example of indefinite article ein and adjective klein. They have to align with the gender of the noun, in this case Mädchen, Frau, or Mann. And you see in English, really, nothing changes except for the noun. You might ask, like, who cares about adjectives, like in my UI? I'm not gonna put like red shiny button, right? Gaming to the rescue. You have Eric has slain the hairy spider. And this is an actual example from the gaming company. You can also go with the flaming sword of destiny or something like that. If you follow the link here, you will go to the framework that enables this in the gaming experience. They like you to be immersive, so jarring grammatical problems kind of take you out of that flow. Verbs also inflect. This is French. This is by gender. So la télévision is feminine and the computer is masculine. And you see the allumé changes the form depending on the gender. So many parts of speech inflect. How are we handling it today? I would say poorly, but plurals on the left are handled by our ICU libraries that Mark mentioned and CLDR rules. On the right side, you have the shopping carts, cinemas, theaters. All of these are statically translated in the messages. So the linguist or translator had to go in and decide, okay, this is a genitive, I'm going to put it in that. But it requires money, right? And it doesn't scale well. Where are the problems? Now that we have placeholders, not a static text, so the placeholders are the things with $sign in front. You have a simple message of travel. You ticket from location 1 to location 2 is approved. What do we do today? We use the magic colon. Colon destroys the flow of the sentence, but it gives you that out where you don't need inflection. So you can say you're traveling to colon location 1. It's really bad for audio pronunciation, but for text UI, kind of works. Hey, username. So simple greeting. We kind of cheat and just say welcome, and we don't even put a name. This doesn't work for Spanish. The welcome is going to be gendered. Payments, you received funds from username. We go with you received funds from the user named, and then you put the name. It really flows, right? And this is the worst. Turn right on street towards some points of interest. So for example, turn right on California Street towards the lake. What people mostly do, they have a bunch of predefined points of interest, like lake, churches, monasteries, mountains, but it doesn't scale. We need to find a way of making this scale without paying for translations and being actually shackled by limited options. Things that we are not looking at in the current scope are knowing when to use in or on, depending on the location. Is it an island or not? Or fixing the whole sentence. We are looking at the placeholders and vicinity of placeholders. AI actually might be better for the grammatical checker of the whole sentence. So the impact of inflection, I would say it's a scale. We have languages that are heavily inflected, where this is really visible, like Slavic languages, Semitic languages, agglutinative languages. But we are not in the clear even for our top tier languages like French and English, where you need at least pluralization, which is a form of inflection. True, it's solved mostly, but still you need it. So I would say most users are impacted by the lack of inflection support to some degree. Work so far, as Elango said, there's going to be an unconference tomorrow. This project started as an unconference topic last year. We created working group under ICU4X in February this year. We connected with Wikimedia to get lexicons and lexicon information, and to actually donate back one day data to the Wikidata lexicon. And this is really crucial part, because lexicons are not free. Most of them are licensed. Maybe some countries actually provide lexicon for their language, but it's in general, you don't have free access to lexicons. So this is a really crucial part of two-way street of providing better lexicon for everybody. We looked into FSTs, which is finite state transducers, like Panini, to encode the rules. Apple has started code and data donation for bootstrapping of the project, and George is going to talk about that more. And then we looked into ML, especially LSTM models, for a higher precision, more complicated cases. Now, this scary screen is very simple. It's a English pluralization rule. So if you look at the bottom, there's an inflect function that takes the singular form of the noun and returns a plural. So how do you build a plural? You have three rules. First three lines, right? First one says, any set of characters that end with consonant and ends with Y, you replace Y with IES. The second one says, any set of characters that end with SS, SH, CH, X, and Z, you just append ES to the end. And the last one is catch-all, just append S to the word. So when we build the plural result, we just say, hey, look into the exception list first. If the word is there, just return it. If not, check if IES rule matches. If it does, return that result. Otherwise, go for ES and then to catch-all S. And that's it. That's your English pluralization. Of course, the rule sets are much more expressive than this. You can express much more complex terms and relationships. And one interesting fact about FSTs is that they work bidirectionally. So you can actually feed the plural to the network and get the singular back without no extra work. So how would you deploy them? You develop the rules, either the way I did manually, or you can feed the state machine examples, and more varied examples, the better. You get better coverage. Then you export that to a binary file and then use it from the OpenFST C++ library. And then you're done. So we go from Python, which is really good for text handling, into C++ for performance reasons and compatibility with other systems. George?
I have some exciting news that I want to talk about, and actually Apple has approved the open sourcing of the library that involves grammatical agreement that's being used in Siri and other parts of Apple software. It is a C++ API with a C wrapper around it, and it supports all of Apple's operating systems and Linux, and it supports the languages, it supports many languages, including Arabic, Danish, German, English, Spanish, French, Hebrew, Hindi, Italian, Korean, Norwegian, Dutch, Portuguese, Russian, Swedish, and Turkish. So it supports a lot of languages, and I'd like to thank the Unicode consortiums and the Inflection Working Group for their interest in accepting this code contribution, and I'm sure that it will be adapted for the needs of the group as we expand the functionality and adapt it to what the Inflection Working Group is involved with. It supports many parts of speech. It includes things like nouns, like turning objects into objects, or days, or day into days, and vice versa. Adjectives, maybe there's some adjective that you're changing that you're putting in front of the noun. Like, it's hard to provide in English an interesting example, but in other languages like French and Spanish, a lot of the Romance languages, the grammatical number and the grammatical gender of the adjective are taken on by the noun. There's verbs. So if I want to say the light is on, and I want to change the word in the sentence from light to lights, I would say the lights. Would I say is or are on? I would say the lights are on. And that's an example where we need to, even in English, get that grammatically correct. There's articles. So in that previous example, when I say the light is on, the word the is a definite article. But I could also say like an object or a table, and that's the indefinite article, and I need to change that depending on what word I'm referring to. In a word language like Spanish, I'll have 4 definite articles: el, la, los, and las. In French, there's 5, and it depends on whether or not the word that I'm referring to starts with the vowel. So there's a lot of these articles that you need to look into. There's also prepositions. The example was like in or on. This code will not determine the difference between in or on, but if you provide the word on, it'll make that on grammatically correct and agree with whatever object you're referring to in your sentence. There's also numbers, and I will admit that when it comes to grammatically correct numbers, if I put the 1 on the wall and I ask you to pronounce it, you just say 1. You know, what else could it be? And then I put a word in front of it or next to it. I could say January 1st, and now I need to change the pronunciation to January 1st. Likewise, if I say one man or one woman, in English, there's only one form of one, but a lot of other languages will take on the grammatical gender. The number will take on the grammatical gender of the noun being referenced. In Spanish, I would say una mujer or un hombre, depending on whether or not I'm talking about a man or woman. So there's a lot of those cases, and I will admit that that is a reuse of ICU's rule-based number format to get that grammatically correct. Goes on from there. There's also the ability to inflect a list of items. So I could say an object and a table, and I can make each item in that list, and I can make them all indefinite or all definite, for example. I can do that in all these languages. Also, in some languages, CLDR provides some data for like, well, I have and, but you have two forms of and that and depends on the adjacent context, either the previous word or the next word, to get that list into grammatical agreement. The code will provide some functionality to allow you to choose the right form of and. I recognize that this is pretty dense, and I have in 2 slides an example where we go into much further detail about all these grammatical topics, and you can use that for reference for getting more information, more details about all this stuff. The code contribution will allow you to get a quantity grammatically correct. So if I want to say turn right in 1 kilometer, turn right in 1.2 kilometers, turn right in 5 kilometers, or turn right in 2 kilometers, we use the CLDR plural rules, and we extend it, and we provide some ability with the ICU rule-based number format and this inflection, this code contribution that we're going to be working on or contributing. There's a lot of interesting stuff with getting a grammatical quantity into grammatical agreement. You have to take into account that number pronunciation has to either take on the grammatical gender or the grammatical case of the noun, and the noun has to take on choose whether it's singular or plural depending on the value of the number. So there's a lot of interdependencies there. And in a GUI environment or a graphical user interface, you can get some pretty good information, but as soon as you need to pronounce it, you need to know exactly how to pronounce that number. We get that functionality here. You can change the gender, grammatical number, grammatical cases, and others. So a lot of grammemes. A grammeme is a grammatical value of a grammatical category. Grammatical number is either singular or plural. Singular and plural, those are both grammemes. And why would I want to change the gender? Well, if I'm referring to someone as an actor or an actress, I want to refer to that role, their job, grammatically correct. And in some languages, you don't have a language like doctor, where there is no associated gender with it. But in a language like German or a lot of the Romance languages, where you need to take into account that there's either the masculine or feminine form, and you need to refer to them by the correct gender. And you can inflect between those two forms. You can say, well, this person is a woman, so use the feminine form, or this is a man, so use the masculine form. This code also supports customizable inflection with default behavior. Let's say, for example, you make up some word. There's usually just kind of like in Painini, you have some general rules in the English language or other language to make it singular or plural, but there's going to be some exceptions. So if you have some sort of brand name or some sort of object that you want to, that's brand new, that you just invented and the world has not known yet, you can customize it and provide your own form of inflection. It'll also support customizable pronouns with default behavior. For example, you could say, this person completed their job, or this person, Robin, finished his job. Robin finished her job. Robin finished their job. Robin can be either masculine or feminine. And you could even use some other pronoun instead of their. There's also scenarios like in Hebrew and Arabic where you have a possessive pronoun. And I want to say, here are your results. Here are your messages. The choice of the word your, if I want to pronounce it, I'll need to be able to choose whether it's masculine or feminine if I have that information available. So there's a lot of code here, especially with the help of Denny recently. We'll be adopting, the goal is to adopt Wikidata and to provide and to ingest that data and make it usable through this API. Thank you, Denny, for looking to getting this data into this code into good shape. Now, when it comes to how this stuff works, and this is something that a lot of people have a difficult time with, is understanding how word inflection works. I wanted to pick the word cat in Swedish. So there's two grammatical cases. The genitive form is like the possessive form, I'll say, just simplifying here. And you can make it singular, plural, indefinite, or definite. Indefinite is like an object. Definite would be the object. So in this case, it's cat, so a cat versus the cat. So when you start off with a lot of declension tables or whatever you look up in a dictionary, you will typically see, you'll start off with cat, and maybe the other forms you may not see in the dictionary, but you just may get a declension table of like how to get to the other forms. When I do lemma-based inflection, I'll start with cat, and then I'll just add maybe a suffix or choose one of the other forms. But with lemma-less inflection, what I can do is start off in a sentence, and I just say, I want to make this word definite, or I want to make this word plural, or I want to make this word singular. I can do here is I can start off with catens, and that's singular definite genitive. Now, if I want to make it plural to turn into caternas, and for those Swedish people in this room, please forgive my pronunciation, I would just change the singular to plural and leave it definite and leave it genitive. And that's how I move around in this table, is I'm keeping all the grammations the same, and I'm just changing it to the other form. And this inflection table, one of the things to note is that I'll take the common prefix off. That will become the stem, and then all the suffixes after that is how I move around in the inflection table. To choose, I'll do the longest match for the suffix, and then figure out that's the grammations I'm using, and then modify one of the grammations to get into the other form, attach that new suffix back into the stem, and I'm good to go. That is a quick overview. I recognize that everything I said was quick and confusing, and if you want to know more, I recommend these 3 videos that I've previously done to go deeper into this topic of grammatical agreement and word inflection. We have last year's Unicode technical workshop, automatic grammar agreement and message formatting. We have at the Unicode conference, there is authoring grammatically correct conversational templates for Siri, where we talk about how Siri creates a grammatically correct sentence. And there's also let's come to an agreement about our words, which I did at an iMug meeting back in 2017. And with that, we'll go to back, talking about AI.
I told you you'll need to be awake for this. So please take a look at the image, find problems with it while I cover the bullet points. So why not AI? I mean, everything is solved by AI today, so why not this? I mean, it looks like a perfect match. It's highly computational cost, and you have network latency, especially for UIs. Oh, by the way, all of the slides will be available later on. There's a link, so you don't have to take a photo if you're looking for information. Right? Second one is you need large quantities of data to train the models, and a bunch of languages don't have that amount of data. Third, George mentioned in some languages, some nouns can be feminine or masculine, especially about professions like a doctor or a pilot. And data might be biased towards the masculine form. So you would expect a less feminine results from the ML model, right? So there's a bias. I don't know if you like hallucinations in your UI and randomness. I don't, so that's unacceptable. And until that's resolved, we shouldn't really be feeding our users hallucinations. And in the end, as I mentioned, we are not trying to solve the whole sentence grammatical correctness, just parts of it around placeholders. So AI might be an overkill. Did you catch all the problems with this? The scale sitting on the, instead of hanging. And the text is, of course, great. Of course, there are places where AI should and can help, where latency is not a problem, where you can do offline processing. So generating lexicons, we have to check with the legal about that. Generating rules for state machines, smaller models like LSTMs that just do pair matching, like input and output, may be possible. They're still more expensive than what we talked about before, like code and rules. And they can help us with coverage of languages we don't have experts, but we have data, and where the grammatical complexity is high, like Finnish, for example. So what's ahead? The Apple donation, when it lands, we need to look at it. We need to adopt it properly. We want to scale to more human languages through any of the means listed there, cover all the major platforms, and work with Wikimedia on improving and consuming the lexicographical data. This prompt for this image was artisan, hard at work, sweating. I really don't know why the pencil is pointing up and what this thing in his right hand is and what the block is. Is it tofu? I don't know. So far, TLDR is no, you cannot use this right now. We do have a couple of prototypes for English and Serbian in Panini. API is in process of landing. Lexicon formats are being worked on, depending on the also Apple's donation. We are close, but not fully done. So I expect an MVP in next year, where definitely before the next UTW. Is there anything you can do to help? I would wait until we have the lexicons done and APIs, and then we'll need help expanding the lexicons for any language you're interested in and adding language rules either through code or FSTs. Yeah, this guy needs help. Here are some resources. The first one is our Git repository. Second one is this presentation. Apple Foundation Framework, if you want to have like a sneak peek of what's available on Apple's platform, the API we're going to have is going to be similar. Panini FST resources, LSTM resources, and some additional grammatical frameworks. We have contributors from all over the place, Apple, Google, Wikimedia, and some universities. Now we are ready for questions. It's a dense topic, so let's go.
I'm Mike McKenna from Square. I noticed you've got genitive and nominative cases. Are you planning to do any more? Because inflections get really fun with Latvian and Lithuanian, for instance.
So you don't have to pay for extra. No, this is
Can I interject?
yes.
There's a lot of cases out there, for example, German and Russian. So Russian has 6, German has 4. It's very extensible. The code works with many other grammatical cases. It is very flexible.
I think it was just an example for Swedish 2 cases to not complicate.
Hi, I'm Aaron from the Middlebury Institute of International Studies. I was wondering, so I've noticed some movement in English where you don't want to use, like, let's say the female gendered version of a noun, that you'd want to call everyone an actor instead of using actor or actress or things like that. And so I was wondering if I still want certain pluralization features, but I don't want gendered nouns, is there a certain way I can, have my cake and eat it too, or how does that differentiate?
There is logic, and then there is a lexicon, right? So I think our goal is to make lexicon user editable, and you can then massage it in any way you kind of want.
It's also worth pointing out that if you choose actor and you're referring that as either man or woman, you can continue to choose that. And if you want to say actor and you want to make it plural, it'll turn into actors. If you start off with actresses or actress, it'll turn into actresses to make it plural. So whatever you start off with is what it'll turn into if you're just modifying one grammatical property, one Grammy.
I had a question about the Wikimedia. So I know that you have Wikipedia, which is an encyclopedia. You have Wiktionary, which is a dictionary. And then you're talking about Wikidata. And it looks like you're focusing on Wikidata. I know that there's also a difference in the licensing terms that these things provide, but also just kind of the technical content that they have, the structure. So could you speak to why Wikidata is more interesting for you?
They already started collecting data for lexicon. So they have some kind of community, and which is really hard to build over time. The license is really, I think, public domain. There's really no restrictions on use, and it really matches, and it's a subset of Unicode license. So we don't really have any constraints in using it. And so we felt it would be a double effort in starting a lexicon collection on our end when they already have the tools and we don't have any barriers from using it. So it's better to work with them on expanding their lexicon than to start yet another one. Does that answer? And yes, it's Wikidata. They have multiple parts of their. Maybe we should bring somebody from Wiki to explain, give you the the organizational chart.
Yeah, because Wiktionary is there. Wiktionary is a dictionary, but it has a different license from Wikidata. So, like, why would you not want to use that?
This is just my personal opinion. I'll just state that. My personal opinion is that one of the things that comes up is that sometimes you need to add your own word. So a company that wants to adopt this implementation may want to have certain terminology that's unique to them, some brand or product name. And they have marketing teams involved with what is the plural form of a given word, which may be counter to what the average person may or may not use. As soon as you start mixing Wiktionary with your own terminology, then you start going into, is that a contribution? And do I need to open source that and contribute that back upstream, even though you may have a very specific marketing reason for making certain product plural? Licensing restrictions is definitely one of them.
And Wikidata has very low.
And being public domain, that mixing is not as much of an issue.
Cool. Hi, I'm Conrad, formerly from Meta. And I have a question about, is this a service from the operating system or a library that you use in your apps? Because like the concern that I'm thinking of beyond app size is privacy. And so like WhatsApp had to scrub all gender inflection because the WhatsApp does not know your gender. And so they needed to actually remove that feature from all the languages. And of course, for some languages that's more acceptable than others. But for but since gender is a protected category, it's important. And also some languages will also inflect on age as well. And that's even more protected. Depends. And so how do you think we can still provide this while recognizing privacy?
Our goal is to create a library with accompanying lexicon information. So you can use it in your app. Again, there's a size. You can expose it on the server if you wish so, but that's for you to decide, right? So this is going to be a library with the lexicon. And we don't collect data from the user in there, right? So there's no, that's correct.
Yes, Zane, also from the Middlebury Institute. I think the concern here is that for this feature to work at all, the user must expose their gender to whatever app is using the data, and there's no way to then prevent that data from being collected.
I will address this. Let me just start off with this. This library does not save user preferences. It is a library. It is not an online service. I recognize that this may be used in a service that would necessarily need to use gender information. Within Apple, that is protected. It is not exposed. Users can share it, but they cannot query it. You have to have certain entitlements. So that is restricted information within Apple. I recognize also that other services, Meta and Google and others also have gender information in their services. That is beyond the scope of this library. We do not save it. If you don't use it, you have to find some way to kind of say, okay, I don't know the gender. I need to provide some sort of gender neutral form. The example in Spanish is, if I know that you are a woman, I may prefer to say bienvenida. In Spanish, I may want to, if I know that you're masculine, you may be bienvenido. But if I have no idea, I may say bienvenidos todos. So to all welcome, which is fine. But if we're just talking one-on-one, it's like, well, who else is here? But it's grammatically correct. So you have a choice, and this is something that localizers can take into account. But we do not store information. We do not write it. The API user has to provide that information.
There's a follow-up.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess my follow-up is just, I understand that that's not the scope of this API. It's just, I think, an inevitable concern that users will have, because whoever's implementing the API is still going to need that information to provide to it.
Yeah, and that is an architecture beyond the scope, but I recognize that it is a concern. It is a very valid concern.
And I have a secondary unrelated question, actually, which is, you've spoken a lot about gendered languages, Romance languages, for example, and of course, more and more people identify as non-binary, and some of them speak languages where that's not entirely possible within the current framework of the language, and they are effectively inventing new grammar for themselves. What are Unicode's plans to try and support these evolving grammars?
Good question, and I think that's going to probably come up at some point. I think there's more than one way to potentially handle it. One is, if it's in there in Wikidata, we can adopt that. If it's not there, there are ways to say, I don't know this word, I don't know the gender, and I really need the gender. I will need to provide an alternate inflection. So keep the status quo for a lot of GUI out there where it's like, I don't know what the gender is, just use it. You can also provide custom inflections if you so desire. That customization is available, but that may be an app-specific customization. I think this should be the last one.
Yeah. Last question. And the more information you provide to the library, the grammatical correctness is going to be better, right? You can ignore some of the points that we have, and then you get worse result, but more safe result, maybe, for privacy. I mean,
no.
Is this mic on? Which?
Mediato, OpenJS Foundation and Mozilla. Is this an Apple library or a Unicode library, and does it have a name?
It is an Apple library that the inflection working group is. The inflection working group is going to look into adopting. So I got approval to make it open source yesterday.
The light from the legal tunnel.
Yes. I'm sure there's going to be some discussions about the naming. We have one naming that passed the trademark review. The group may rename it to something else, and I find that acceptable. It's going to be a discussion at a future working group meeting. But it is C++ with a C wrapper, and I'm pretty sure that's not changing anytime soon, in case that matters.
So the final result is going to be a Unicode library under Unicode license.
Yes.
Based on Apple's donation.
Kind of like how ICU originally came from another company and then became part of the Unicode consortium. Similar path.
Well, we'll change the namespace immediately. Thank you.